big, oak branch down across.
Okay, it's 7:06 PM, and I'd like to call to order the Town of Willington Board of Finance regular meeting to order for September 20th. First item on the business is seating of alternates. And we are missing one, so we need to seat one. Missing Lori. Any motions to seat?
Whose turn is it?
I think they're both seated last time.
I'd like, what?
I think at the minute, I think they're both seated last time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was.
All right, well,
Doesn't matter.
Given that Fred says it's Bill's turn, I'd like to move that we seat Bill in place of Lori.
Okay, motion by Peter to seat Lori, seconded by Randy. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so moved. Approval of minutes, we're talking about the July 19th regular meeting, since that was
And
the
those are
last
the ones
one.
in our packet, so I'd like to move to accept.
Okay, motion by Peter Tanaka to accept,
Second.
second by Mike. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so moved. Present to speak, anybody present to speak who's not on the agenda? And I see nobody. Okay, first item, new business, town office building repairs update. That's, we're talking about the front entrance ramp area, which doors, ramp, flagpole, that's you. And basement floor pillars.
So this was kind of like, I acquired this, project a couple months ago, and, I believe it was on the CIP, approved on the CIP from 2016.
Yes.
And basically the ramp in the front, I'm not sure how many of you, and the stairs, yeah, the whole front entrance of the, town office building is, it needs to be replaced. It's cracking, crumbling, the Public Works Department has been out several times to, repair the ramp part has like these seams in it, and they keep popping up, and they would keep, anyways, needless to say, it's time, it needs to be replaced. Derek, before he left, had sought quotes, and we got two different quotes from JM Lab and Sadow Construction. But the quotes that we received, and basically when he was leaving, I just got these two quotes, and they were very different. It really wasn't detailed. There was no plan for entrance to and from getting in and out of the building, with the ramp, because obviously we need that. Or just like, what are we gonna do, like how long is it gonna take, and stuff like that. So, our building inspector had suggested that we go through the Easy IQC program, which is part of CROG. So it's kind of like a state bid. If you go through CROG, you don't have to go out and seek the 3 bids. So I did that, and they have been wonderful. I mean, I call the guy, he shows up the next day. I mean, he's been awesome. There were, like I said, the ramp that wasn't taken into consideration in the beginning. We need to put a temporary aluminum ramp up. So that's going to be, I think it's like $7,000. And we're estimating it could be two weeks to 2 months. It just depends on how long it takes them to fabricate the railing. Because we thought we could use the old railing, that was another part of the original quote that Derek had sought, but the building inspector said that the existing railing is no longer to code, so we can't use it. However, we can probably sell it and get the scrap. So with that, they also came out and gave me a quote for the pillars under the town clerk's / assessor section. And when that was originally anticipated to put into the CIP, I can't remember, do you know what the original quote was? It $22,000, I think? I think it was like for $22,000. And the bid actually came back for, did you guys get my memo, by the way?
Yeah, it was $22,050.
Yeah, so, but in reality, it was only, it's like $6,500. So I added, contingency in a little bit. So I was wondering if I could take a little bit, most of the pillar project and tack it on to the, ramp project. So, the total is $67,050. Any questions?
The total of the ramp project, or the total of all of the projects, both of them?
Both of them together.
So one was
And
much more than.
One was
anticipated,
originally
one was much
approved in
less.
total. What was originally approved in total?
$67,050 for both projects.
Okay,
And now we're looking for 66,000.
okay,
For
so it's
both.
within, so it's still within what was
Yeah.
originally,
For both.
okay,
They
all right,
were
that's
two
what I
separate
thought.
projects, budgeted
It's
two
just
very
one's
different
higher,
numbers.
one's lower,
Yes.
but it's, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, one's very high, one's very low.
And the Pillars project is coming in a little bit lower because they're doing it at the same time. They're out here doing the front ramp, so they'll start with
One
that.
mobilization and all
Right,
that,
so the
yeah.
truck's already out here with the cement, so
Beautiful.
it took a lot of factors were
Mhm.
left off of that. The original quotes that we had, based on the number, did not take in the full scope of work, which makes the difference in cost that we weren't anticipating. We weren't anticipating the rail, there was no contingency for the ramp
Ramp,
that has
yeah.
to be, we have to have alternate use because we have to have,
ADA access,
yeah,
yep.
access.
And the flagpole too, the flagpole will have to come out so they can work, and then they'll put it back. I mean, stuff like that, and those, I think they call them ballasts, those two things in front of the,
Bollards.
yeah, bollards,
So you
sorry.
don't run up the
Those
stairs.
need to come
Yes.
out and be put back in too, so.
And we did change some of the things. They wanted to build a beautiful wooden temporary ramp, which was extremely expensive. And they said there must be a less expensive way we can do this, and then they came back and said they could wrap one. We tried to take the flagpole off, thinking that if we could do it ourselves with Public Works, but our guys said it wasn't something they were able to do, so we had to leave that in. So we did make some changes and tried to take out as much as we could do on our own.
I have a quick question. This was approved in the 16-17 CIP plan, why wasn't it done then?
Our road funds were frozen when there was all that uncertainty in the state. We couldn't do it.
Did we move it forward in the plan, do you remember? So that it's also
No, it's-
reflected in the,
In the total in the plan,
It-
it is reflected.
okay.
We kept it under consideration when we
Beautiful.
moved the plan forward.
Thank you.
This was the LoSiP stuff.
Yes, the
Yeah.
LoSiP stuff.
So when the LoSiP money became available, in the wintertime, I set all those projects forward in motion, and then we got to the summertime, and then Derek had been on leave with us, which is how it ended up. Robin taking over, taking care of that, my office took over a lot of public works.
Is Derek gone, or is he just on?
Derek was on leave for,
Oh.
12 weeks, so he came back on Monday.
Oh, so he's back,
He's
okay.
back. But we didn't wanna wait for him to come back, because especially this is a time issue before the plant goes down, so we need to
Sure.
make sure we get what we need.
As it is, we're coming in close, very close.
Any questions from the board?
Yeah, the 1296 for contingency is, do you anticipate using the contingency?
This isn't my forte, so I
Alright.
don't know, I'm hoping not, but I can format like a 60-page document with table of contents and stuff, I can't force
Got
it.
it, got it, I understand, I'm with you on that,
I did your annual report, it's done.
Beautiful.
The answer is no, we hope not to use it, but
All
it's
right.
there
Obviously,
in the
yeah.
event.
Can we,
Contingency is a
this is a
safe
question
idea.
for you as chairman of the board, I guess. Could we put that contingency in the Board of Finance fund instead of setting it out for this? Because I find that every time we set out contingency funds, there is a contingency by definition. And I will tell you how much the contingency will be in this case. It will be $1,296 contingency.
That was money that was budgeted, it was already someplace, taking it.
And I
Right,
just threw that in
right.
there.
I was just gonna put it, I wasn't gonna take it from you, I was
But
just
think it
gonna,
would go back into the
Right.
line item
It goes,
within,
it goes
it's
into
not
the
used.
Right.
general reserve.
It's not
It's
used.
Oh, wait,
all right.
this
But-
is
No,
LoSiP
it
money,
stays
right?
in the
So
LoSiP.
it stays in the LoSiP.
It stays in the
All right.
LoSiP money.
And we are going off the CROG thing, so I don't think they can sway from,
all right. I think I'd move the money without the contingency, and then if you need a contingency, come back to us and it'll be there for you, because it'll be in the LoSiP fund.
Is that?
This
They're
is,
gonna
can we
change
do
the
it that way?
project since it
This
has to
is
go to town
already-
meeting because of the amount? of money.
There,
So the way LoSiP works is, once an amount is approved
right,
and the town meeting has approved it, then I send a request to the state
So all we're
saying, I
doing-
wanna use this much LoSiP money. And when the project is done, I say I've used this much and put this much back.
okay.
I can never go over whatever amount we have asked for.
Well, that answers my question. Thank you very much, Dish.
You're very welcome.
That means
And that makes sense
we
to me
can't
now.
do what he's
That's right, what you said is I can't do what I wanna do.
would suggest not doing it.
You make it very complicated.
And you explained why, which is,
And I don't know how to do any of that, like spending it, so don't worry about that.
Don't worry, the contractor will help walk you through it.
well, the contractor will walk you through it step by
I
step.
spent a lot of years in construction.
Put
They'll
your
help you
hand
out.
right over yours on the mouse and click for you. Let's click together. All
We've
right.
been pretty good about crossing off what we don't need, so.
Okay, so, any other questions? If not, then we have a suggested motion, if anybody wants to make it. Read it. Peter, you're used to reading backwards.
I move that we, fund, the combined project of the front,
It's written down
No,
the
it's
bottom.
right there.
oh,
It
there
says
we go.
suggested motion right at the bottom. Yep.
Board of Finance recommends, I move that the Board of Finance recommend that the Board of Selectmen call a town meeting for the following purpose: to appropriate $7,000 from the Capital Projects Fund LoSiP support pillars underneath the town clerk and assessor's wing to be reimbursed by the state of Connecticut Local Capital Improvement Program.
Now read the paragraph above it.
Well, I usually read them backwards, cause that way let's do these
Okay.
one at a time.
All right.
Let's do this as two motions,
Okay.
cause I think we can do it that way, right? Do it as two motions?
I'd rather.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think it works better that way. So
Okay.
that's my motion, do I have it?
Motion by Peter,
I'll second.
second by Barry, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Okay, unanimous. Next motion.
I'd like to move that the Board of Finance recommend that the Board of Selectmen call a town meeting for the following purpose: to appropriate $59,000 from the Capital Projects Fund, LoSiP TOB Masonry, for the purpose of the TOB Masonry front entrance ramp replacement to be reimbursed by the State of Connecticut Local Capital Improvement Program.
Okay, motion made by Peter and seconded by Mike. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Okay, unanimously approved.
Thank you.
Robin, thank you.
Robin, will you be staying on as project manager, or are you handing it back to Barry?
I'm just gonna stay with it, cause
Okay.
you know,
Yeah.
but we will have, when they start pouring,
'Cause you're
we'll have
excited
a
about
party
it.
where everybody can put their hands in at the top.
She even taught me what ball is, so I don't even know what they were.
Oh.
I
I could
really
use some,
learning.
I could use some like
Remember
around my
you
garage
going
doors, you
through
know?
the-
That'd be helpful.
Long conversations of followed.
Okay, next item. Board of Education transfer request to the non-lapsing education fund. That's the thing that Gwen just handed out just before the meeting. Superintendent Stevens.
So basically, we're requesting that $66,174 that was going to be, when unused for last year's budget, be moved to the non-lapsing fund. It has to be under 1%, and it is. And this is basically, how I see it, one of our only contingencies that we have. And really the purpose of this is, if something major comes up, whether it's a student with, that is outpaced for special education needs, comes up, the cost is extreme, it's a lot of money, it's not something we budget for. Some districts budget an additional 1 or 2 outplacements just in case. We do not do that, we budget for actual. And so this money would go into that non-lapsing fund for a total of $95,634 after, if you did a transfer. And that's basically a contingency. If we're going to access that money, I believe we have to come back to you. What I missed, Donna?
66 is less than 81, right? Is that what?
You are correct.
All right. Well, I knew that 66 was less than 81.
That was the question you asked.
It's just thinking
Where
aloud.
did you grow up? I was just gonna, I didn't know if you had Willington math or.
No, I have Mansfield math.
You weren't educated.
I had Willington math, that made sense.
Any questions from people?
Yeah, I have a question. Why would we wanna put the money in your bank account when we're trying to keep as much money as possible in our account for our ratios? And when you need money, we give it to you anyway, so why would we wanna do that?
I think that's why we're asking, it's your call, either way, we have to come back to you. And I think that, you know, there's been an unwritten agreement that if we had some sort of catastrophic, you know, thing happen in the school district, you know, there's extreme cost to something, we would have to come back to you, it's not money that's in our budget, so,
And we've done that before.
I don't know.
He's new at
You
this.
hear, with the special ed funding for your
Please, sir.
court costs and everything
Oh,
else.
yeah, I wasn't part of that, though.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
Following that line of questioning, is there an expediency issue? Is it more, is there a need that might be immediate for the money, and is it faster to have it in your fund to get approval versus is it a longer process if the money was sitting in the town and would need
That I
approval?
don't know.
It's the same.
It's the same.
It's the same money.
Okay.
It's just a different fund.
Has to do,
I would say it would be the same process, there would be town meeting
But-
involved
well,
in
that's
taking
what I'm
town
saying
funds
is-
where you wouldn't, I don't believe that was one of the stipulations with the non-lapsing fund.
That was what I was getting
But the
at.
approval still comes from the Board of Finance and then the
Right,
town.
but the mechanism, if
It is
they had a
faster.
need for the money, the mechanism, if it was in this fund, would be to come to this board.
So it
But
would
if
be
the
a
money was
faster-
held in a town fund, like you're asking, Barry,
They'd still come to this
then
board.
it would come to this
So
board, but it would
it's
also
still
require a
board.
town meeting, is what you're saying.
Over
Or would,
20,000.
if it's over
In that
20,000.
lapse- in that fund as
And,
well.
or an additional appropriation to the board budget.
So it's gonna be the same
Require a
process
town
either way?
meeting. Exact same.
Okay,
process.
that's what I was trying to figure out.
Wait,
Okay.
with town meeting or not?
so,
With the town meeting over 20,000.
Okay.
so the real reason why the fund was set up, it had to do with the NBR calculation, right? So, by doing it this way, you know, you don't get another appropriation that goes against your NBR. And that's why that was set up.
Okay.
That's why there's this non-lapsing thing, so when they have leftover funds and they're returning it back to the town, we have an option to put in exactly what they want, or a portion of what they want, back into the non-lapsing fund, and that way, you know, whatever's in the non-lapsing fund's already been appropriated in other years, and then, you know, it's not an additional appropriation. That's the idea behind it.
Okay. Cause it doesn't get caught up in the NBR thing.
It doesn't get caught up in the NBR.
Okay, so there's an advantage there.
I might, deferring to Erica,
Yes,
to try to
there is an
understand it
advantage.
correctly.
Yes.
Okay.
So this is a 17-18 money that they did not spend, correct?
That's correct.
Yes,
Do you know,
exactly.
you know what area where you didn't spend? Where was it?
It was,
TRB.
Concord?
no, it wasn't.
I mean, but that's the bulk of return money from the board, that it could come from
No.
anywhere.
Well, that amount goes
Yeah, it was
towards our
613.
NBR.
No, we
No.
returned,
All of that.
we returned 613, it was not TRB. 613,000 came back to you. That is totally separate of this pool of money that was requested. So the money, to answer your question, the money that was not spent is across multiple areas. It's not one area where there was a huge chunk of change.
Can
So-
the education budget be, can we show that we spent $68,000 less when we're going to look at our NBR bogey next year? Any
You'll be
idea?
able to see what
Yeah, cause
their
it doesn't.
actuals, their budgeted versus actuals.
I mean, if you didn't spend the money in 17 and 18 and it came back as a slush
You're
fund
gonna see
adjustment,
budgeted and actuals and they're gonna be off, but you could be adding up multiple.
it should lower
Departments.
NBR requirements, shouldn't it?
No, there's no such thing
No,
as lowering
it's
an
off
NBR
the
requirement.
sadly, it's off the budgeted, which is part of the NBR
Right.
problem.
No?
You can never
Once-
lower your
Once
NBR.
once the budgeted amount was approved in that previous, for the
It's off the
previous
budgeted
year,
amount, not
that's
the
what they'll
actual.
count.
Yeah, not the actual.
If it were off the actual, you never would have had that TRB fight, it's off the budgeted, which is the major drawback.
And that's why I don't like this, I mean, I don't like this particular, it's nice that it's available to us, that you can put it, it's a way to avoid the NBR calculation. But every year, we have to go refresh myself, why did we do this, what was the purpose of this? It's not straightforward. If we have to always think about it amongst ourselves on the board, just try to explain to somebody else like they do to the public, forget it, and it's just very difficult.
Okay. No, I mean, I can see how you could have a overrun certain areas.
Yeah, I think it's a great question to ask. if
It's also,
there's something out there.
it's also, it's like a slush fund, if I'm reading this correctly, under 20,000 you can spend at your will, right? Board of Education.
Still get,
Under
some Board of
20,000.
Finance, all of it is Board of Finance approved.
Everything
Everything.
Everything.
going into the fund has
That's
to
what
be,
we said.
so everything going out.
Thank you.
And at some point in time, I remember us discussing about keeping a balance in there of around,
3%, not
It was-
to exceed 3%.
No, that's a limit by law. That's a limit
No,
by
no,
state
no, not for
statute.
this account. This account is
Yeah.
is a Willington creation, right?
No,
It's not a
no,
state
it's not.
creation? Oh.
No,
No.
and it's a statute, and it's 3% is the maximum you can put in.
Oh, 3% is the maximum.
Correct.
yeah.
Or,
But I remember us talking about $100,000, was that about the price of an outside replacement? I mean,
not
that's-
only do we have a minimum budget requirement, we have a minimum spending requirement.
But why? Why would you wanna put our money in a separate place that we can't touch without a town meeting? Why? Why would we do that? We wanna keep as much money as possible in our town, so our ratios are better, so we have access to it when we need it.
Under $20,000 would require a town meeting, no matter which way you went. So the $20,000 is the threshold for town meeting in any way. So you would still need to, it
Well, why
would
would
go
we
from
park
you
it?
to town
My
meeting if
question
they
to
wanted
this board is, why don't we
$8,000.
park it in the schools? Doesn't make any sense.
Only so you don't get double dinged for the MBR calculation.
Chip seal.
Okay, so Barry's got an argument why we shouldn't be approving it. Any other comments? Any motion?
I'll move that we transfer to the non-lapsing fund $66,174 from the 2017-18 DOE budget.
Okay, motion made by Randy. Is that right?
Second.
Second by Mike. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Doesn't pass.
It's 3-3. 3-3. So motion doesn't pass.
Doesn't pass.
Doesn't pass. So we have to keep going until we pass.
Pass out.
Or pass out. I mean, that's how it works.
Okay.
Okay. Is there an alternate motion?
Now, can I
Is
ask,
there- is there-
how many years have funds been transferred like this? I mean, it happens pretty routinely, right?
No, happened once to circumvent MBR. We set it up to circumvent MBR that
That
year.
was the first instance of it?
We never wanted it, it doesn't make sense for our board to allocate our authority to the Board of Ed. It's something, if they need money, we give it to them. There's never a question of them not getting what they need.
I think the authority, I think it's a misnomer that we're allocating the authority. I agree that we're putting the funds in a place that changes how it affects the town's fund ratios, but we're not abdicating any authority. I think we've been over this,
But what's the logic?
like 6 times in this meeting tonight, that this board has to approve it, right? Whether it's used from this fund or used from a fund here. So it's not a question of who approves it.
Then
Right, that's what I asked
Why would
them.
you wanna do it?
That's correct.
If it
No,
means
I'm not
nothing-
arguing to, I'm just saying that's inaccurate to say we're giving away the authority. We're not giving away the authority, we keep the authority in this
But we're
board.
taking $60-something thousand that was under our control and giving it under their control.
No,
We could spend
it still has to
67.
come back here for approval,
Right.
so it's not under their
Yeah, but
control.
Barry
We can use it
But
for anything.
Right.
whose
Not-
account?
We can use it for anything in our bank account. Right now, it's just gonna be at the Board of Ed.
Okay, that point I get.
Yeah, we look, for this year, we looked
Yeah.
for a 2.3% reduction in the education budget,
Yeah.
which was about $175,000, if I'm not mistaken. I'm sorry, it was about $185,000. They came in and we approved a $175,000 increase. That's a $350,000 swing. The way I look at this as a businessman, this is just a little bit of reduction off that $350,000. I mean, that's how you have to look at this, you know, because the road down ahead is gonna get tough.
Yeah,
It's just-
there is no extra money.
Yeah, I just think it's being financially smart.
Okay.
Yeah, that's That's my gut.
So there's no other motions on the table, then the motion doesn't pass, and we'll move on to the next item. Okay. Center Elementary School heating and cooling updates, repairs update.
I don't have much update for you. I've talked to one of the reps that proposed this project, from MCOR. I've talked to an engineer, and I've talked to our contact at MCOR as well. And they're still trying to figure out the best way to do it. I stopped one of the ideas that they came forward with, and the reason why is because they were going to have to continue moving water down those hallways, both sides of the hallways. And they would use certain parts of the 39-year-old heating system. And I thought that was a poor idea. So we're still going back and forth. They're still trying to come up with some unique ideas. If they can't come up with something, then it will just be a heating project at that point in time.
Like we originally thought.
Correct. Yeah, so just trying to collect more information and make sure it makes sense, both from cost of the, what you would actually get out of it if it's a heating and cooling project, but also to maintain and the cost to operate. So, and that was basically your question was, what's it gonna cost to run this? So, that's really all I
I
have.
think we were also wondering about the new cooling system. How much does it actually save? Does it run backwards, and how much do we?
Yeah, and the system that they had proposed to me, once I learned that they were gonna use part of the old system, it did not make sense anymore. So, that's why I said I didn't do a ton of research before I came to you, because I didn't wanna waste my time.
Yeah.
And so, the more research I did afterwards, that didn't make sense. So, I'm gonna keep, we're going back and forth with ideas, and they walk me through the process of what their, proposal looks like and how they wanna do it. But I don't think it makes sense using 39-year-old heating units, because, and then Barry, I think this was his point, was it doesn't make sense to use those if, something fails. You wanted to know that what you were putting in place was, gonna work. You don't wanna fall back. So I agree with that.
New.
What's that?
It's new.
Yeah. So it's still in the works.
Okay, next item we have Hall Memorial School roof replacement.
I'm learning a lot about state reimbursement. I learned at our final meeting for the oil tank that the Hall School roof, the quote that was given to you was for a roof on top of a roof. They will not allow that for state reimbursement. You have to do a complete tear off in case you have problems with your decking, and repair your decking, and then do new roof from there. Uh-huh. So the cost, we're working with an outstanding architect for the oil tank, and I asked him, he does, roofing projects all over the state. I asked him for something that was comparable. He gave me a quote for $144,000 just for construction costs, and that was out of Farmington. And that's already been bid out. That was the low bid. The money that you put out there was around $89,000, I think, for the whole school roof. So, and that was a 20-year roof. You could still, again, this is kind of, I wanted to come back to you as, not on a statement here. You could make the choice to say, hey, Phil, go do the roof. We know it's gonna be a 20-year roof. It could be over the top. But I will tell you that there's probably 4 sections of roof that need to be done in Hall, and you might be closer to 400,000. So, and just like the oil tank, you have to put that whole amount there. You could do it in phases. It would be a 30-year roof. My feeling at this point, after everything I've learned, is it doesn't make any sense to do a 20-year roof at this point in time. You're not gonna get any reimbursement. You're only getting a 20-year roof. You have no guarantees of what's underneath that roof. And that's the concern. There's leaks in that roof, and so why would you would wanna know that what you're putting down is gonna last. And so, we would have to go back through this entire process of what we're doing for the oil tank, for the roof, and do it right. You could choose to do a section. He estimated that the architect estimated that for the two sections that we, had the quote for, he would safely put a cost estimate in for reimbursement for $200,000 after all your engineering costs, after your architect costs, after if you have any problems with your decking costs, and then you would get your reimbursement back from that amount. So you have a decision really.
So what's the reimbursement on, is it 80%, 100%?
It was 64.64% today.
All right. Yeah, that changed, I understand.
And ironically, I mean, you're looking, the numbers are pretty close.
Mhm. But the upfront cost would be $200,000 for those first two sections?
As I understand it, it's just like the oil tank where you had to go back and put up the full 135 in.
Yep.
This is the same
Same thing,
concept.
yeah.
The state of Connecticut wants to see that you have the full amount. One note the architect shared was that obviously the cost comes down just like you saw the cost in your project come down because they're already there. If you do the entire roofing section because the company is already there, he said you save about $1 to $1.50 per square foot. You're not talking about a ton of money, but you might be talking about $20,000.
Well, look at, that makes sense, it's an old building, we patched that over and over again. I sort of would like to see everything torn off and fixed, and made sure it's good.
That's my gut too. I just,
What's the urgency on it?
there are leaks. I mean, you can do a section. And I think, you know, we could use some of the maintenance money now for repairs and patching. And that's some of what we've done at Center School. There's a company that comes out and basically you take a crayon, you walk the roof, and any spot that looks questionable, you circle it, and when they come through, and that actually saves time, they come through and they patch that spot. If it's a seam, it's really hard. I think we have a quote right now for about $7,000 to finish that process at Center School on just the lower section roof. I have not gotten a quote for Hall School because we thought we were gonna replace the roof, so.
Bill, if we don't do it, will it affect your insurance policy?
Don't get worse.
I don't think so. No.
So what do you look at the window for next summer, if we do it that way?
Great, yeah, proposals have to be in for, you know, a certain amount of time, and for all these state projects, they're anticipating a year to get to approval. It's a long process. If I could share the number of forms that I signed just for the oil tank, it's unbelievable, and the roof is more.
200,000 is the entire roof?
That's two of the four sections.
Two of the four, what
It's half.
shape is the other two in?
It's the
Cause it
same
seems to
year.
me, I'm on these boards, it's, when I was on the Board of Ed, and this board, it's like the roof, the roof, the roof, the roof.
Just kept patching it.
Yeah,
It's been a patch. There's been a small section, it's been patches, and there's been small sections that have redone.
On top of.
Specifically over the peak, I think there's some shingled sections that were redone, but any of the rubberized sections, it needs to be torn off, in my opinion.
The newest section of the school is coming up on 40 years old. Is that the age of that roof?
I honestly can't answer that question. We have gone and looked for records and tried to pull permits, and I'm not sure last time that roof went out that
Potentially the bottom.
we could find records for it. So,
These lasted longer than that.
Well, I'm just wondering, I mean,
We've
if
gone back
if that's potentially the original roof,
We've gone
and
back
that's
into
the
80s.
newest section of the school, which was 1980.
yeah.
Yeah, that was open.
what is your, work or your progress in consolidating the schools or building a new school? You guys talked about both.
It's starting, the process is starting all over again, so it's on the docket to get going again. That's another thought there is, you know, if that comes to consideration, I don't know that it makes sense to put $400,000, even though you'll get 64% of that back, into Hall School, if there's a thought to that. Will we be closer to that in a year? Could we? I hope so. Gosh, I hope so.
But we're 5 years from move-in, probably.
Right, but
You don't wanna patch it for 5
I
years.
think within a year,
You know the answer better.
we might spend some money, we will definitely spend some money on the process, going through to complete paperwork and plans to the architect. But if we ended up saying, you know what, this is just not gonna happen, we don't wanna spend the money on this, you can stop your process. But if you haven't started it,
You got another year to go.
you gotta wait another year.
You said the process takes a year from this date.
Jackie started that oil tank in January, and it is,
Have they started moving any soil yet?
no, we cannot. We are still waiting for approval.
You remember we moved quickly because we were looking at a 12-week window that, apparently they weren't on the same page as
That's,
we were.
that's on
You're not
YouTube,
allowed-
I'll share that
You're not allowed to
process too.
shut off your heating oil tank until the heating season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, we're gonna get
Kinda like
fined
you
if
can't
we
cut
miss it
across
that way?
195 till
That was
move-in
out,
day.
that was our
We'll-
deadline like before school, so
We'll
we
talk
can get it all
about it.
done before school
I don't think so.
started.
We did everything right.
Right, and that's the question, we'll get to it.
Well,
in
for
some
this
other
board
thing.
on the roof, I would like to see a new section put on, but I think maybe we should think about either bonding or putting on a rotating schedule for the sections of the roof like we do the fire trucks. Cause it's something that we can't let our buildings deteriorate. Maybe it should be through the CIP committee, I don't know, but
That's-
I'd hate to see it patched again. I know it's pragmatic, and you have to patch it, but it's like, I don't want that to be the solution.
We gotta patch it until just it takes
Yes.
a year to go through the paperwork.
Absolutely, you have to patch it, but it's like that, I don't wanna be, I don't think we should be done at that point. I think we should
Well, we can't
keep
issue
the
them
process
garbage
going.
cans for the whole.
$5,000 makes more sense to patch a roof than 80,000 to get a 20-year roof that's an over the top that
I agree with you.
doesn't.
Yeah.
I'd rather
I-
pay the 200,000 with a plan and have it down to the boards, make sure everything's safe.
And I think you have to keep in mind the total picture here, that it's not just the roof and the oil tank. It seems like that building is eating money and so is center. It's like you take the long view, the strategic view.
Well, the center of, the original center school was what, 70 years old, 50s? 52, right, okay, so it's basically, it's 70 years old. And the original the original section of Hall School is 100 years old.
It's almost,
Almost.
Yeah.
it's coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we have to maintain it.
So
So
I think,
it's-
I like the proposal going forward to start the process, so we don't waste a year.
Right. Patch
There's
in
a
the
lot of
meantime.
headwind to ever building a new school or augmenting one of the two that we have. So, tell me again what the numbers would be for that?
For what?
What would you envision the proposal being? The $200,000 solution at first to do two sections, to go to the state of Connecticut and get in line?
Yeah, and, you know, your reimbursement rate could change, but I mean, that to me makes the most sense. I didn't see, when I looked at the full project of doing 4 sections, I'll be honest with you, I have to do a ton of work when I have to do that twice, and I would have to do that roof project twice, because you have to do your plans all over, you have to submit all over. But I think $400,000 is an awful lot of money as well. I think I'd give it a year and, you know, go back, and I'm gonna have a book for you for CFP, I'm gonna be honest with you. I've already sat down, I'm kind of changed the process. I've already met with the team one time and said, I'm not looking at cosmetics, I'm looking at what needs to be fixed. I wanna see pictures, I wanna see ages of things, I wanna see documentation from outside professionals, not just an opinion that this needs to be fixed. Because I think that's where you make, you know, a smart decision.
Thank you. That's,
So it's, you know, we've already had one meeting and we have another meeting coming up. And so it's gonna look ugly, I think, from the standpoint of when you start to see our numbers, I'm a little worried about that part of it. But I think they're gonna be real. So from the standpoint of 200, 400,000, I mean, the nice thing is if the state is kicking in 64%, you're getting some money back and you're adding 10 years to the life of a roof.
It'll cost the same as a 20-year roof, really.
And so I say the cost is
Yep.
pretty darn close.
And it's the year in between of you doing that process and also at the same time us hopefully making progress on the school needs,
Making
school
some
facility
decisions. Yeah, sure.
issue.
I hate to ask this question, but in the 4 sections, how are you gonna identify the 2 that are most in need? Do you already know that?
Professionals, not me.
Well, I would think you wanna think about what assets are underneath that section of roof, where there's a lot of money.
We know
so-
that, but we also know where the leaks are.
Yeah.
We know, you know, and that's one thing this last rainstorm, you know, I called both
Was
head
very
custodians and said, I wanna know where the leaks are. You know, there's not a ton, we've done a good job repairing things, but there are still leaks, and the problem with a leak is it could be leaking here, but it could be way over there and they're hard to identify. They're just really, really hard to identify because it could run.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Road paving, chip sealing. I was noticing roads near where I live were paved and then chip sealed.
I noticed
They
the
were
parking lot
paved
was
and then
chip
chip
sealed.
sealed.
They were
It
paved
was
and
shipping.
It looked to me
It's
like
not-
paving.
It looks like paving.
But I'm not an expert,
Right,
so
so that,
I
I
thought
was
I'd
just
ask
in a
you.
meeting today where we had this similar
Interim
discussion,
public
giving as
works.
an example.
Yeah.
It's not enough, it would not get you through, a season. So it levels out and evens out the road, and I'm not an expert on shimming, so I don't wanna tell you something that's not right. But it is not the amount of asphalt that you would put down if you were paving the road. It just looked really nice and everyone
And
enjoyed it,
that's
and then they
It's a
came.
skim coat.
Yes.
I'm talking about the village, I live near the Village Hill,
Yes.
Spock Road area,
Yes,
so.
so there were several roads that were done, that
Had a
Blair
big-
Road was one of
Big
them.
crown job done.
Cemetery.
Yes. And so then that stays on for a bit, and then the chip seal comes on, so you were one of many who said, whoa, we got some phone calls, they just paved my road, and now someone's coming down and putting rocks all over it, so.
That's maybe because people love that
They
smooth,
really enjoy
black,
that smooth,
quiet,
to do
quiet
that.
surface.
Yes. Poor Robin lived on one of those nice smooth surfaces, and then they came and put
And
some
then
rocks
she
down
got
on
dust,
it.
yeah.
So it was just a shim coat, so it's just a thin layer. It's not at all what we would have used if we were actually paving
And I'm just
surfaces.
recalling back from budget time, because we had a different conversation that we thought paving was cheaper at that point in time. We did the budget. We didn't talk about chip sealing.
Chip sealing is what was in the budget for this year. I know there was a lot of asphalt in last year's budget, which I wasn't,
Okay.
as privy to the discussions about how it got there, and a lot of that
Maybe I
money was
just
returned.
I think, yeah,
Yes, because we didn't-
I think you're off by a year. We
Okay.
did a lot of paving instead of chip sealing a year ago because the price
Right.
of
And
asphalt
the
was
plan-
way down.
We
The
flipped
plan
around the other
was to do a
side.
lot more of that, and then it
Okay.
didn't actually
Then
happen because that was
asphalt
a
prices
big budget.
didn't stay down.
So the situation's flipped around again, now chip
Yes.
sealing is,
So
okay.
the plan this year had always been to do
Okay.
the shimming and chip seal.
That's why I-
It was a less dusty stone, if
Yeah,
that
it
makes
was-
anyone feel better.
It
but-
isn't,
It's
they
a
use a
lighter-
different
oh, it's a
company.
lighter
It's a
color.
lighter color, they got it from someplace different, I think Becker's didn't have any, so they went to a place in Massachusetts.
They did
but
a nice job out here.
They did a nice job on our parking
I
lot,
pulled
so,
into town hall.
And this one
all
will
the
get-
cars are parked on
because of the time of year when we finish, so we won't stripe it until the springtime. Just get you done. Right, Robin
I would
handed over the
assume,
striping
I
of
would
the lot.
assume we may see Derek, needing more cutting edges though, cause usually after you chip seal, so the first year's a lot harder on the plow.
Oh,
Has he already told you that?
nope.
No?
So-
Well, maybe he already has enough in his budget and he
Slowly
won't need
learning
to.
all of the public works stuff.
Okay, any other questions about chip sealing? I think that's the last item for new business. Oil tank replacements under old business.
So we had our meeting on Tuesday for approval, Tuesday or Wednesday last week. I'm expecting any day, I think the letter comes snail mail. Once we get our letter, we can order the tank. We're going off the state bid list is our full intention. But that puts us into, the company is booked through December at this point. And so I had a long conversation with Tia at service station, and she recommended pushing it out to April vacation because number one, you don't have to clean up as much because the kids are not in session. They'll be able to do it faster. Your heating season should be over. You don't have to have a temporary tank. And if you do have a tank, it's smaller because it's only hot water. It's not heating the building. I thought that was a good idea. I asked the same question you did, Barry, about, okay, so what about fines? And anything I've seen from DEP has basically said, as long as you have a corrective action plan and you're on track, okay. We don't, at this point, all of our soil testing, everything is pressure testing, everything has come back great. So if we had an issue, I think it'd be a different story. this point, we don't, so, I don't know that it makes sense to take the risk of digging this tank up in January, putting in a temporary tank. I know, Peter, it's been a long process.
No,
I told Jackie
I'm
this,
just
and she's
very
laughing.
happy that I'm not the one doing the paperwork.
Yeah, I will tell you, I signed a letter about wireless connectivity for this oil tank. The same paperwork you signed for the oil tank is the same paperwork that you have to do if you're building a $400,000 or $40 million building.
Oh my god.
So there's a lot of paperwork to it. The architect has been great helping us through the process. That's the plan at this point in time, is to aim for April vacation after heating season, and if DEP barks, then
Mark back.
Summer project.
It's out of your hands.
Team from Service Station said that it would look really bad for them to go after a school system. And if you Google it,
Especially when you don't have a leak.
right, they've looked at some of the school systems that just didn't document that they had tanks that were not taken care of. Once they had a corrective action plan, it was left alone, so, that's where it's at.
Okay, other item, annual report, they're starting to come in now, thank you.
I know there's several departments, I mentioned it at our staff meeting,
Yeah.
that I think was last week. I've mentioned it at our board meeting, and anytime I see other groups, I remind them to get their, annual reports in, which is, for most people, same template, changes some things, so.
And Mike, you have
I'm
some.
trying to help.
Some involvement with the fire department, you might just wanna remind the chief that.
I would gladly do that.
Next time you're.
What is it?
Tell the other chief.
Next time I'm fire department business.
Next time you're there on fire department business.
But you asked for them by September 30th, right?
I did ask for something.
So I'd love to see what was written in the past, because I did not know that.
Oh, were you not on the distribution?
Yours is gonna be all new? Great.
I'm sure you were on the
Well, I'm sure
distribution.
Brenda
There's
does.
copies of it out
It's-
here.
I mean, the board amendment.
Okay.
You can hand in a different one.
And Brenda can do it for us.
Right.
Even better.
Just plug in this year's
There you go,
numbers.
Phil.
And there's just a section from the Board of Ed.
Yeah.
Ground
Great.
for it.
Perfect.
I grabbed it on the way.
They're on the counter.
All right,
Every department that has
Just
budget
change it,
funds.
Phil Stevens, you're.
all right.
I have, last item on the agenda, old business, Willington Education Association contract negotiations. Any news to bring up?
So we are in the mediation phase, although we did not hire a mediator because we were so close.
Yeah.
And we are hoping that within the next few days, we settle. It's looking positive. It doesn't look like we're gonna have to go to arbitration, which costs everybody a lot of money. And so it's hoping that, we'll have some sort of settlement to share very soon.
Okay, I know, Peter, you've been sitting on some of those.
I sat in on all the ones that they had, and then there was supposed to be one Tuesday?
Yeah.
I can't remember when it was now when I came in here, but they didn't have it, so I haven't been
We
there.
didn't have it because it's been so close. We've
Right.
just been emailing back and forth, so
Okay.
we're close to
So
it.
no need to go into
So-
any updates or executive sessions or
Nope.
anything like that, okay, wonderful. Correspondence, I think we got something from Rachel Pierce just today. I'm trying to figure out where that
The
is.
report on EAA, ELA.
Yeah, the Board of Assessment Appeals, everybody saw that. It's just a couple of minor adjustments to the files.
They're all just motor vehicle.
Yeah.
The big one, big one.
Okay. I think that was.
Oh,
pretty-
is that the cover sheet that said $3,000 or something?
Yep, 3800.
Yeah, and then that's the only number that I could digest, so.
Okay, good and welfare.
Sorry, correspondence, did you see that thing for Region 19 as well? Region 19 is doing contract
Oh,
negotiations.
that's right. Yeah, we have that in our packet as well. So Region 19 starting up contract negotiations,
Yeah.
as in the past, we can have a board member attend the initial kickoff. If anybody's interested.
Do we have a schedule for when is the meeting?
October second.
October 2nd,
Right now,
6:30
it's the same
PM.
night as our proposed, what will be our proposed town meeting. Just-
I'm flying out of here on October second for vacation, so.
It's administrators.
Administrative.
Yeah, I was
administrators.
just gonna ask that question, so it's not the teacher's conference.
Okay. I bring it out there, I'm not gonna ask, Peter's very busy with this one, so,
The
thank
town
you for.
meeting next
Jim, you might wanna ask Lori.
Yeah.
She, that would be type of, right, would be right up her alley.
Yeah. What else?
Jim, can I share something else that might be good and welfare slash
Sure,
correspondence?
let's move.
Or
to
it's in
welfare.
between,
Yeah.
so,
So
and I
that's
didn't
where we
share
are.
this with you
Okay.
earlier, earlier today, because we didn't get it till later this afternoon. In the recent weeks, we've discovered, mold here in this building, talk about buildings and pump it up. Luckily, there's no basement under here, so,
Yeah, we're in it.
we're in it, it's right over there. So we could take a field trip if anyone would like. The basement, runs along the upstairs wing, so it's underneath the town clerk assessor's wing and the selectman's wing. The portion under the vault is concrete floor. That's where we first discovered, the mold. Some employees went down to look through some records. We have old grand list books there, and we believe they're all grand list books, no one has touched them. And at this point, no employees are going into that room. We had a dehumidifier that failed, and we don't know when. So,
Is that an indication of how often we go into that room?
correct. It's not, it's until someone needs
Yeah.
something in that, because it drained outside, so there was piping outside, but they're not records that are utilized
Mhm.
regularly. Right now, the only thing that's affected in that room are those books and, the door. So we've gotten quotes, from ServPro, and we're, looking at insurance claim for that, because there's also some mold in the attic, as well as, over the copier in the selectmen outside of Robin's office. In addition to that, there is some in the dirt portion of the basement, so there's a fire door between the concrete portion under the vault, and the rest of the basement is all dirt. So there's a large open room where these pillars are going, in the next couple weeks, and then there's a crawl space that's under the selectmen's wing. So, there is some mold like I've never seen, it's a nice white mold. The gentleman that came to give us a quote on pouring concrete on that to help with the moisture, we notice it doesn't get wet, and we talked to Derek about that, it doesn't really get wet, it gets damp. There's never been, to my knowledge, a dehumidifier in that area. So the pallets that the boxes are on, the boxes don't appear to have anything on them, the pallets do, and there's some sort of, to me, unidentifiable mold underneath the pallets. It's going to have to be cleaned up in some way. I believe, several years ago, Christina had gone to CIP asking, for that floor to be concreted to help mitigate some of the moisture in that room, and it was rejected. The gentleman that's, from EZIQC that was doing the project for us out front, we asked him to come in to get us a quote for that, and he got it to us this afternoon, and it's, $21,474. That's a concrete slab on the large portion, and a smaller, just a 2-inch pour, over a vapor barrier in the crawl space. And then a sub pump, that includes a sub pump, and then we would need to put some sort of permanent dehumidifier in there that would drain outside. So, and I'm guessing the reason there isn't one right now is because it would have to be large enough and be emptied on a regular basis. As most of you know, there is no maintenance person in this building. It's a need we have. I can tell you that there are issues everywhere. We too have leaks. Last week, the one over the copier is a leak, and that's where the mold has come from. We patch and we patch and we patch, and things give way, but there is no regular building maintenance, nor is there a maintenance person. So this is something that I'm probably gonna submit to you sooner rather than just CIP. I think it's something we have to think about, especially because mold has become an issue. It was one thing, it was a damp floor, and we thought it should be done. It's now creating what could potentially be a more significant issue.
What's the foundation over there? Is it handmade stone?
Stone.
Yeah,
Concrete?
stone and dirt floor.
Hence you need the sump pump.
Yes.
And this is all based on the recommendation of the building inspector. He, told me what to make
Right.
sure we looked for when,
It's a lot more than we had hoped it would be.
and there's this big thing of white mold, like it's just like growing, and the contractor goes, he's like, oh yeah, that's, that's bad, that's bad. I'm like, great, now you're watching.
We are,
So Surf Pro is coming in to,
they're not touching that room.
Yeah,
They're doing the vault room.
They're doing the vault
Yeah.
area, the attic, and, over the copier in the selectmen's wing. And then we're going to have to send the books out, there's quite a process.
That's the bulk of the
That's the
cost.
bulk of the cost, about half of the cost it's about half the books are equal to the Surf Pro cleanup, because it's quite a process. And there's a local company that we were given the name of through the state library, but they ship their things far away anyway, so the first quote we had gotten was somewhere and then shipped them out, and if you can imagine, that's half the cost, more than half the cost. It's just transporting these things because of the way in which they have to be contained while you're shipping them. Yes.
Are you just getting them demolded, or are you getting them
Otherwise.
electronically transferred to?
No,
some
their
kind
books
of
actually
electronic
have to
database?
be, they have to be maintained permanently in their
State statute.
state. So it doesn't see, everyone we've spoke to about this is not uncommon, especially in old, town halls. To us, it was very unusual, to
Yes.
them, it was like, oh, this is nothing, what you found is nothing compared to what we see in some rooms. But it's kinda gross. So it's a freeze-dry process, they'll freeze-dry the books, then clean them, and then they go through all the pages. When they're done, they'll be able to go in the vault, and people will be able to use them. So right now, they're in that basement area.
Fuzzy, they're very fuzzy.
Fuzzy. We did, we have since purchased a new dehumidifier that's in that room, and it's working.
And we hooked it up ourselves, yes we did.
The maintenance man didn't do it? Oh.
We have,
Oh, wait,
That's
wait,
Matt,
wait.
that's us,
Oh, yeah.
maintenance. I mean, yeah.
Can you get some sort of humidity monitoring also?
We can, that's gonna come with a cost that no
course.
one has prepared for.
But
That's
probably
something we
less
need to
than the
think about.
recovery cost. You know, if we,
Yeah.
next time the dehumidifier fails,
Correct.
that will have paid for itself
Yeah.
in not having to do this.
I'm just wondering
Absolutely.
if our alarm company has, I mean, you have an alarm system here, right? It's just another thing that hook to it.
There are
Right.
different, I've already looked at a couple of different things. Our town clerk had just been at a town clerk's meeting, so she spoke with someone from the state library who shared some information with us. There are some devices that can go down there, and then they can, everything now is high tech. We could have, a system on someone's desk.
As long as
I
you
won't
filled
say
out the
Robin's.
form about wireless connectivity,
That's
then
right.
everything will
We
work
can have that.
correctly.
So, it was
Right.
good.
See?
So,
See? It
um,
matters. It all
Sadly,
matters.
They'll come
sadly,
around.
I'm
Bring it all back
unaware of
around,
any
Mike.
state reimbursement that we would get for any of these projects. This not is on us. So,
Well, there's a
Insurance.
grant, but,
Yeah.
well, there was a grant, that grant, if we
But
file an
it'll-
insurance claim, the grant will get us
yeah, $1,000.
back what was paid out to insurance. So, but it does mean us putting in a claim, but none of that work right now is the larger part of the dirt basement is covered under that, because that wasn't because of a failure of any sort, that room didn't have anything in it. But yet it has to be mitigated, so.
All right, we can't have mold going in the basement.
We can't have, no.
Can't have it
You
chewing
know,
away our important records.
And one of the other things we'll be looking at as part of all of this cleanup project is to having some of the air tested and things like that, so that A, we know, and B, if there really is nothing, we can put employees' minds at rest. I'm very concerned about anyone who comes into this building, but the people who work here spend many hours here, and I can't, now that I found it, I can't ignore it, and we have to move forward with it, because it could be detrimental to anyone, and they're breathing. If I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the air, we do not know that, so we'll do tests to see that, and we've had that done before, and they were fine. So I'm gonna hope that the
That's
smell,
how you know
sometimes
that
what we smell is
the
just
fix
the
worked,
damp
right? I mean-
basement, yes. So, don't be surprised if you start seeing something before, CIP.
Okay.
Thank you.
At that time?
Anything else,
That's all I got. today?
Move to adjourn.
Good and well, I got a couple of items on good and welfare. We haven't moved that yet.
Whoa,
So-
easy.
So, as you know, right, we passed it in our budget to have our meetings video recorded. Laurel Moss is our videographer. So, gonna be using some of our.
Does this
budget
mean I
for
should be
that.
wearing a nicer shirt?
She's on that side of the camera, so you have to dress nice.
That's what I meant, that's what I have to wear.
One small comment.
Yeah.
Erica,
Yes.
last March, we talked about the change in superintendents. We were gonna look at the MBR, and you said there were a couple of movements going on in the state that you were looking at in terms of getting our arms around it, and were there things changing within the way it's calculated?
So nothing has changed as of yet. Hold on till November because anything could come after the governor's race. I will tell you, I was at a CCM legislative meeting today, and one of the, I wanna make sure I quote it to you right, I have it right here. One of the proposals, from one of the committees is going to be, it is specifically around only a specific section of MBR, and pertaining to capital improvements. So I'll tell you that. We only made it about halfway through this today, so there was lots of discussion. All right, so, one of the recommendations is to provide towns and cities with much needed education mandate relief by enacting common sense changes to the MBR statutes by removing capital expenditures from MBR calculation. We don't typically have a lot of capital expenditures. We do it very different, but if we had something in there, so right now that committee, that's the only thing that came out of that committee regarding MBR. But that's what CCM is encouraging when it gets to that point. That doesn't mean there won't be other legislation, it just hasn't started yet. Look, I'm hoping the whole thing would go away, but I think nothing is really moving until after the governor's race. I think that's when we'll start to see some action on different things. I think right now people are kind of playing real low. So, you're welcome. Mentioning CCM, they have an annual meeting on October 30th. There's a convention, after the convention is, annual meeting, and then the very last governor's debate, which is it's the week before elections. So they did, mention today that we should encourage any of our elected officials to attend. You can attend, it's kind of a combined cost. You get to go to the dinner, the annual meeting, and then the race. It is a $75 cost. But if anyone is interested, we can share the information with you where you can go online and register. So it would, the bulk of the tickets for this event, and it is at Foxwoods, are for municipalities. Each candidate gets a certain amount of tickets. There's another small pool, but CCM's push was to have the bulk of the people in the room and be able to contribute. There will be an opportunity for that. And then you could be in the spin room after, which does not sound like fun, and be part of that process. But they want municipalities, they're really pushing for municipalities to be able to speak and to have a say in this debate. So if you're interested in going, again, it is a $75 cost to any individual, but they encourage any of our elected officials if they're interested.
When is that?
Tuesday, October 30th.
Doesn't matter, we're be out of town.
No, that's the legislative meeting is Wednesday. The annual meeting and dinner and then the debate are Tuesday.
Okay, and I have the last item on good and welfare. So Mike is our vice chairman. I encourage you to make sure you copy him. I know sometimes I only get emails and things like that from your staff, Erica. Also copy Mike. I have a new job that requires I do a little more traveling outside the country. I don't want to. As far as I know, I don't think I'll be out of touch, or I'll have some.
Just in case.
I'll know this traveling is coming, and I can say, oh, yeah, go see Mike. You know, but if for some reason, something happens, I just want him to start getting on the email distribution, copy him on as well as myself. And then that way, I'm guaranteed nothing will be missed.
And these days, more often than not, my phone, my town email will work on my phone
Oh,
now.
that's good.
Wow, cool.
So I may actually see
Now
the
that you
emails.
said it out loud.
I may actually see the emails.
Good. Probably from that wireless contract.
That's right.
That's all I have for good and welfare. Anything else?
Move to adjourn?
Move to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Okay, so moved. 8:11.
Oh.